Hello, friends, and welcome back to From Your Center. Hello, Leah.
Hello, Adriana.
So, today we are going to talk about some buzzwords that get tossed around a lot, but maybe don't mean anything if you don't talk about them. And those words are personal development and professional development. In fact, we talk about personal growth and professional growth in the introduction of our podcast, in the description of our podcast. Like those things are really important actually to your work and to my work. But whenever I see somebody write down on like a LinkedIn post or something like, hashtag personal growth or hashtag professional development, I'm like, what are we talking about? And do you remember, are you a When Harry Met Sally fan?
I mean,
That
I am, but
movie?
I don't recall movies as
Oh
much
my
as you do.
gosh.
But
Okay.
please,
All right.
yes, I
Fair enough.
watched it.
Okay. So When Harry Met Sally, one of my all-time faves, there is a scene, and remember this movie takes place, in like the 80s and 90s. And there's a scene where Meg Ryan and Carrie Fisher are in the bookstore, and Carrie Fisher leans over and she goes, there's somebody staring at you from personal growth. And it's Billy Crystal, and he's like hiding behind, the habits of highly successful people or whatever,
sure.
and and then they go on and thus the greatest movie of all time ensues. But whenever I hear personal growth, I kind of giggle because it's like there's such a stereotype of the kind of person who hangs out in the personal growth section of the bookstore.
Mm-hmm. Self-help too.
Self-help. Yeah. Exactly. It's like 16 books on your night table right next to your bed that like you have bookmarked with it, in the first like 10 pages.
You don't know me.
I mean, I do. But actually, I think, and I'll let you listeners in on a little behind the scenes. When Leah and I were talking about, our new name for our podcast last summer, I went to Leah's house. I drove over to Boise. It sounds like it's 2 miles away. It was a 6-hour drive. Drove to Boise, and we hung out. Yeah, it was amazing. We hung out in Leah's kitchen for a couple of days and talked shop. And one of the things that we sat there and parsed and mulled and finessed and tried was all the different things you could say besides personal growth and professional development. And we literally couldn't come up with something that was more descriptive than that people would understand kind of as a shorthand for what we're talking about.
Right.
So today we definitely want to get into kind of what are those words really, and how do we kind of think about growth and think about development and have it actually kind of manifest and work. So Leah, what have you got for us in this realm today?
Well, I love that we're having this conversation because I hope that we can bring, more layers of nuance and meaning to these very generic terms in our society, because I do think they're really helpful. That's the hardest part, is they are really, really helpful to our lives, but they need to kind of be made fresh in order for them to have sticking power for us. So first and foremost, I just think of personal growth and or development, those words, kind of harkening back to our neuroplasticity episode, and just remembering, all of us, that our brain is constantly learning. Mm-hmm. Our brain, the anatomy and the physiology is such that you have the potential within your brain to always be making new connections, to get rid of old connections, to grow new neural networks, to literally increase the size of your brain. Like that's the power of the functional MRIs that came out of the 1990s that we can see in those taxi drivers and Buddhist monks. That literal size of brain can change and function of brain can change. So your emotional reactivity or your emotional resiliency and the activation in your amygdala, which is that fight or flight place in your brain, can change with time. We are not set static beings that grow kind of only, I mean, we can see growth externally from infancy to adulthood. We see the physical body growing, and then it's important to remember that that growth can continue to happen internally, even though you're not getting an inch taller every year. Or losing teeth and getting adult teeth, which is happening in my house right now.
Mine too.
So just that reminder that it's possible. It is something that we need to engage. But I would love for us to, I have one story I want to share, because we think about personal and professional growth. Another cliche, I guess cliches, these words have become kind of cliches.
That's what it is.
So the other cliche that I see is the metamorphosis of the butterfly, the transformation of growth being that process from caterpillar to butterfly. So, which we've all seen, and I think it resonates with us because we've had experiences of change like that. But in my work with people and human beings,
so not bugs,
I actually think the imagery of a dragonfly is much more potent for us to approach this idea of metamorphosis or transformation or growth or kind of change. So yeah, I'm happy for us to kind of talk about that. And then for me, the other big piece is, I think growth and development is not just a becoming, but also an unbecoming. So simultaneously, there is growth towards something and a releasing and a letting go of past things.
Yeah.
Those are the big themes for me around.
Yeah. When you said that, the becoming and then the unbecoming, I immediately inhaled and exhaled, because, in my somatic practice, the breath is that constant reminder. And hey, if you want to be reminded 20,000 times a day, you can be, because that's how many times we're breathing, that, we expand and we contract, right? And that actually each breath is new, because it's new air, it's new molecules. It's not the same exact breath, right? So I really like that idea that to remember that progress is not single directional. It's not, I start here and I go on an upward trajectory on a flat line that never ends until I die. It's like we go backwards, we go up, we go down, we go in, we go out. There's all these different things, and that's all equals growth.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me about the dragonfly. What's that?
So I love the dragonfly life cycle. So I didn't know that a dragonfly does the same. It's born in the water, murky lakes, murky ponds, dirty water. It is a nymph in these, hatches out of an egg. And what I like about it, that I think is more consistent with the human experience, is it doesn't have a predictable timeline.
Ooh.
So a caterpillar, after so many days of eating leaves, goes into its cocoon. A dragonfly could be a nymph for 2 months in the dirty waters, or it could be there for 2 years.
What?
That it is living this process and this stage as a nymph in the water for an unknown, and you know me and the unknown, I love it. That's where growth happens, amount of time. And it is something external in the environment. And I love that scientists don't actually know. This is all the stuff there's still so much we don't know. But there's an event that happens in the environment called emergence, which I know, isn't that such a good word? Such a good word. See, exactly. Emergence. So something happens in that 2 month to 2 year time period that causes this little nymph to scurry out of the muddy water where it's been protected and go onto a leaf. And in that time, it now incorporates. So one, it doesn't go off into a cocoon and wait for long periods of time, which again, most of us don't have the capacity within our lives to leave our lives
Or
for
desire.
and be walled off
Mm.
and no contact with the outside world and like let the quote unquote magic happen. Like most of us have to do this in the course of our daily lives, in the
Mhm.
course of, these little nymphs. Maybe a predator is going to come get them or a bird's going to come try and eat them. But what they do is they actually incorporate all of their bodily fluids inside their little body. And I think of that as like kind of accepting all the dark, murky, challenging stuff that we've
Mm.
gone through and integrating it. And with the fluid pressure inside their body, all of that body fluid is what they gather together. And then it creates a pressure inside the nymph that then pushes out the dragonfly. So it is, for me, when I look at the human experience and I acknowledge that horrible, hard, awful things happen, things that I don't believe in that everything happens for a reason. I think there's
Yeah.
really fucking awful things that happen to people.
Mhm.
And I believe in those moments, healing and transformation can happen. And no one deserves those, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. And
Mhm.
so in taking kind of the dark, the hard, the challenging, and all the past experiences, that there can be almost an alchemy, there can be a transformation or a metamorphosis. I do love all those words. I think it's really helpful that then can express you or push you forth into your new and next form, your new and next level, your new and next evolution.
Mm.
And I just love that idea of it actually begins within.
Yeah.
It's all that is within that little nymph that makes it into the butterfly. Excuse me. Whoop, Freudian slip. Turns it into the dragonfly.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool. And then also very cool, just from an evolutionary standpoint, dragonflies have been here since the dinosaurs. So they got some big time sticking power.
Ooh,
And I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that the process of incorporation, right?
yeah,
Incorporating
agree.
everything that we are studying, learning, have gone through.
Mm-hmm. Our
And
personal experiences, whatever
mhm,
that the real stuff
mhm.
is.
You know, it's I love this. I mean, I am definitely taking this into my public speaking coaching practice because it's all about, the inside and then made external, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is a mistake that happens with with people I talk to about public speaking is that they think that it can all be solved externally. Like that the whole work is, where do I stand? How do I find my light? How do I hold this microphone? How do I make my voice louder? What do I wear? Right? It's all this external stuff is
Mm-hmm.
the work.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is like the external stuff, you gotta do that too. You need to know those things, but I could probably teach you those skills in like an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just about practice. But really the real work is all the internal stuff. It's all the, who are you? Why are you speaking? Why are you, what
Yeah.
what moves you forward in the world? And to take the time and the courage to sit in all those experiences before you emerge a gorgeous, fabulous dragonfly. That Yeah, that is the necessary work to actually do the emergence that you said.
Right.
Otherwise, you actually can't emerge the beautiful dragonfly. We are working this metaphor. You are, you
But
are,
I like because it
yeah,
is so, I mean, because it's the same for my clients too. It's
yeah,
the idea that we are sold in our society that like, oh, if I just if I get a different job, or if I leave this corporate job, then I won't be stressed and burnt out anymore. It's the job's fault, or it's the relationship's fault, or it's this external thing. And of course, there are times and places where external changes can be made. But I think the best example of this is like, you can be thinking like, oh man, like, you know what my mental health really needs? Like, I just need to go on vacation. Like, I'm just going to take a week away and unplug. And then you get to that beach, you spent that money. And guess what? Guess who's still in between those ears and there with you? And it's, and so for me, it's really hopeful because we don't have to live our lives waiting for the proverbial vacation to experience rest, relaxation, calm, peacefulness, connection. Like, you can actually be in really fulfilling and mentally challenging work that you love and not be consumed with anxiety, stress, worry, and burnout. Like, you can do both. And I think there's at least a lot of what I've been seeing is like, oh, the solution is you just need to like leave this thing. And I feel like there's so many of us like us. We love our work. We love being entrepreneurs. There's so many entrepreneurs that love what they do. There's so many professionals who really care, whether they're leading nonprofits or, you know, executives at the corporate level that really believe in their work. And there's like this weird,
especially in
being sold
to us. Oh my God, especially in the entrepreneurial space. I cannot tell you how many people I have been directly pitched or in an email campaign or via LinkedIn that are, you know, I can teach you how to make $100,000 in 6 weeks so that you don't ever have to work again for the next 6 months. And every single time I see that, I'm like, but I like my work.
I like working.
Like, is the goal, I mean, listen, if the goal of your life is to make money so that you can do other things, like, okay. But if you hate what you do, first of all, I would argue,
well,
this is a little tangent.
Even if you make the $100,000 and go sit on the beach, you're
right.
If you were stressed out before, you are still going to be stressed out on that beach.
Like, and I would also argue that if you think you're going to be able to make in any sustainable, repeatable way, make money hand over fist doing something you hate, I think you are sorely mistaken. Because I do think, as an entrepreneur, as a solo person in the world, right? I think there's plenty of people who make a lot of money doing things they hate, working for other people who are, you know, running corporations or whatever. They're going to their jobs, but I don't think they're making money overnight and then going to sit on beaches. Mm-hmm. Those people are going to work every day, making a huge amount of money doing a job they don't like. But like, I don't know. Just to me, if your goal is to stop, is to not have to do what you're doing, then you need to find something else to do, yo.
Yes. And I would argue that you come wherever you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are working in corporate or you are working as an entrepreneur and you're overwhelmed with stress and burnout, no matter what project you engage with, you are you are the
consistent factor.
You are the consistent variable in that equation, which is hopeful.
Sure, because you can change.
Because this is
bringing it back.
There we go. So yeah, because that's a good thing. That means that we don't have to wait for all of the external things to change
or to line up or to
line up or to be perfect or to have the thing that you think, you know, in order to change.